Canadians know our Prime Minister is a little bit gaff-happy. Leading up to his election, there was a time that whenever Justin opened his mouth, it was only to put his foot firmly in it.
The commitment needs to be a commitment to grow the economy, and the budget will balance itself. We have to rethink elements as basic as space and time.
If elected, my first full day as Prime Minister, I would
Since the election, though, the Prime Minister has been more controlled, and for the most part, he sticks to the globalist script his handlers provide him. For those in the international community who probably weren't paying close attention to our election campaign and the series of dumb comments I just played for you, they were given a full display of just how out of touch our Prime Minister and his staff can be when they released this now infamous statement on the death of Cuban dictator Fidel Castro last November. Remember this? Quote, "It is with deep sorrow that I learned today of the death of Cuba's longest-serving president. Fidel Castro was a larger-than-life leader who served his people for almost half a century. A legendary revolutionary and orator, Mr. Castro made significant improvements to the education and healthcare of his island nation. While a controversial figure, both Mr. Castro's supporters and detractors recognize his tremendous dedication and love for the Cuban people, who had a deep and lasting affection for El Comandante." Unquote. I mean, how could you forget that? He actually acknowledged a communist dictator was the longest-serving president of a country. I mean, that's kind of how dictatorships work, basic or otherwise there, Justin. And of course, there was significant outrage in the international community following this statement, especially in South Florida, where the Castro regime is reviled. But that was then, and now today we have received an exclusive access to information packet to the rebel.media. In it, we get a little insight into the damage control the Liberals were in surrounding the international and domestic reaction to the Prime Minister's comments, but also a little window into how a statement that was received so badly around the world was put together. First, you can see in this email between government bureaucrats that getting a statement ready for Trudeau was, quote, super urgent. Look, hindsight is always 20/20, but if they had known the storm of negative reaction, maybe they would have spent a little more time thinking about the reaction they would get instead of rushing something out urgently. But also, why the rush and kind words unless you felt Fidel Castro was worth honoring? Perhaps the writers and PMO staffers have an affinity for El Comandante, as so many who lean left in Canada seem to have. I'm guessing that in their little socialist hipster bubble full of Che Guevara t-shirts that they thought this kind of comment would be received well. Not so much. But once the international media got wind of this statement, our government went into full damage control. They even asked all of the Canadian missions and embassies around the world to not repost the Trudeau statement, and then began working on new media lines in face of so much bad publicity. Yikes. And in Ottawa, the government staffers were also panicking, ensuring they were monitoring local media, especially on the CBC, where they were facing the unusual prospect of negative publicity from the state broadcaster. So they began asking for the transcripts of the discussion on the Power and Politics panel, as well as transcripts from question period in the House of Commons, all to make sure that all damage control was being conducted in a linear and consistent manner. There are a couple other things to note in this packet as well. At one point, the Canadian ambassador to Cuba, Patrick Pariseau, writes to Global Affairs about the PM statement, but it's all redacted as advice, so we can only guess here, but it's probably some commentary on how to dig out of the mess Trudeau has made. And then again, on another page of notes on messaging given the reaction, there is a significant redaction on the criticisms of the Castro regime. Is this where they were originally going to point out some of the actual facts about Castro's record and now want it hidden, lest they hurt Brother Raul's feelings? Well, it's impossible to know for sure, but it looks that way to me. The last thing of interest in the packet we received was a draft of the statement that was issued by Trudeau, which featured a redacted portion that never made it into the original statement. You can see it here. It was eventually replaced by "who served his country for half a century." But I really wonder what it was before. Could it have been more praise written by a hard-left Marxist staffer who idolized Castro even more than our Prime Minister? Sadly, we may never know. For the Rebel.media, I'm Christopher Wilson. Thanks for watching. Keep it locked on the Rebel.media for all your Canadian and international political news. And if you really like what we're doing, $8 a month gets you premium content. We'd love to have you sign up.